Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of Thrive, a Paychex business podcast coming to you from the heart of the Engage conference here in Las Vegas. I am Gene Marks and we're kicking off this exclusive YouTube series with a guest who knows the accounting profession inside and out. It's Mark Koziol. He is the CEO of the AICPA. And so what's on the agenda? Well, it's everything from why building client trust is more important than ever and what the future holds for CPAs, and of course, the impact that AI is going to have on the profession. Lots to talk about. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Thrive, a Paychex business podcast, your blueprint for navigating everything from people to policies to profits. And now, your host, Gene Marks.
So first of all, Mark, thanks for speaking.
Thanks for having me.
Really glad that you're here. You've been kind of busy. First of all, tell me about the show. Engage. I mean, I'm looking around. We're on the floor right now. There's a zillion people here. It seems like things are going well.
Yeah, 5,000 people this year. The energy is electric. You know, one of the things is I was there at the beginning when we put this together to say, you know, we need to bring these conferences together. And this was always part of the vision.
Yeah.
And, you know, seeing that to give them an opportunity to be together, all 5,000, but then also separate into their tribes,
sure.
To be different and have a sense of community, really important. And it's just the energy, the buzz. We had a lot of great feedback, a lot of great conversations with members over the last 2 days.
It's a great show. Any chance you guys ever doing this in Philly? Because it's like a pain in the neck to get out here to
I would love to if we could find a place to hold 5,000 or 10,000 is where I want to be.
Right.
So,
yeah. I think I know a guy. I'll connect you.
All right, good.
So we want to talk a little bit about the profession, but first of all, you're relatively recent taking over the AICPA. Why did you take this job?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. I was here a year ago, which was a month after Barry had announced his retirement, and a lot of people coming up to me asking me if I was going for it. Oh, you'd be the guy. You should go. Are you going for it? Are you going for it?
Yeah.
And at that time, my standard answer was, I haven't applied. But I knew I was going to, and I just didn't want to engage in it. Everything that I've done in my career has prepared me for sitting in this seat today. 12 years public accounting, 3 years doing media planning in political media and public affairs, which not many people as CPAs have done.
Agreed. And not that this organization doesn't have its politics, but obviously that comes into play.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And what we do for our members in D.C. and understanding the D.C. dynamic.
Sure.
So that piece, and then coming to the AICPA in 2006 to run the small firm division, did that for 14 years, left to go run an international association of firms before now coming back. All of that has prepared me to sit here. And I don't know anyone who could have had this role without having at least those 14 years that I had here before, understanding all the complexities of the profession and what's coming at us.
Right. Your keynote yesterday was great.
Thank you.
And some of the issues that you talked about, we're going to touch on right now.
Sure.
Let's talk about technology.
Yeah.
Okay, to start with. So will AI replace us?
No, absolutely not.
Give us your thoughts.
It will enhance what we do. It will allow for us to do different things down the road. I believe we'll see that. You know, I had a slide that I've been using because I'm like constantly. How many times have we heard over our lifespan of accountants being replaced by some level of innovation along the way, right? And so I had to go back in history to figure out that in the 1930s was the invention of the electronic calculator that was going to put us out of business. Of course. The 1970s, 80s was the advent of VisiCalc and the spreadsheets. That was going to put us out of business. The personal computer, oh my God, people could do business things themselves on their own computer, or that's going to put us out of business. AI, blockchain, we heard about that recently. Yeah. AI most recently.
The overall cloud, workflows, all that stuff. Yep, right.
You know, even some of the technologies who are here today, like Intuit with QuickBooks and TurboTax. TurboTax is going to put the small firm out of business and tax. And every small firm I talk to, they say, I welcome our clients trying TurboTax just once, because they're going to realize the value that we bring, and they will mess it up so badly, we'll actually make more fixing it than if we had just done the return ourselves.
So wait, so why hasn't all these technologies put us out of business?
I think because the profession keeps reinventing itself along the way.
Right.
And it, at the end of the day, and this is what I didn't realize coming into the profession, it's that client relationship that's paramount. So the client is what drives what it is that we do. And as long as we continue to focus on that, they'll allow for us to come and do things for them differently based on what the innovation is allowing us to do.
My firm, we sell CRM software, and so we do webinars, and we're doing one like next month, and it's on customizing one of the products that we sell.
Yeah.
And the guy who's an employee of mine who's doing the webinar was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Because we're going to be giving away secrets." And I'm like, "Give them away, because our clients watching this aren't going to be able to do this on their own.
Yep.
At least it will make them smarter, so they can ask better questions."
Yep.
But I just can't imagine as a CPA, our clients need somebody to interpret whatever AI produces.
That's right.
That's the relationship part.
That's right. And so when we talk about AI, where it is today, first of all, the firms are slightly further ahead thanks to a lot of the companies that are around here with AI adoption into the tool that they're doing, or someone found a new problem of an existing software to create its own AI company to complement that particular piece. But then in business and industry, you have similar things, and they haven't necessarily adopted all of it.
Sure.
They may turn to the firm and say, I don't want to invest in AI for this one particular application, but you guys already have it.
Yes.
That firm's going to sell it to multiple clients in a particular way. So that's first. Then you also have the idea that as AI gets adopted, there needs to be controls put in place. Well, we're the controls profession, right? Yep. Internal controls, internal control testing, oversight of internal controls, you have that piece. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be assurance over AI. Is as we continue to build our AI platforms, is it reliable? How do we provide assurance to people internally that as they use it, they're getting the correct answers and they use the right data to get there? All of that is going to continue to be what we do as a profession.
Yeah, I agree. Your TurboTax example is a great example. I mean, TurboTax, great application, all that kind of stuff, but nobody, it's like WebMD.
Yep.
You have the sniffles, you look it up on WebMD, provides you some information, and so you're still talking to your doctor.
That's right.
So you're going to be getting that kind of expertise.
Because I went to WebMD, I had the sniffles, and I thought I had, stage 4 cancer.
Yeah, it's exactly.
So, all this self-diagnosis isn't necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, you need the professionals to help you out with that. Still with technology, how about internally? I wrote about this recently in Forbes. There was a study that just came out, that said that 80% of the users of the mobile version of ChatGPT, 80% are men.
Really?
20% are women.
Right.
And people are like, well, why is that? And of course, women are smarter than men. They're more contemplative over using this stuff. They're more whatever, but it's like a huge number. I thought that was a fascinating thing. When we look at our firms and our employees, people are concerned about AI replacing them or how they're going to be using it in their jobs.
Yep.
Based on that study, maybe more females have more concern than men. I don't, whatever. What would you tell your employees?
I would say that we absolutely have the opportunity to grow who we are and what we do. And that AI is not going to replace you, provided that we can continue reskilling and upskilling you to be able to embrace it and use it differently and interact with the client. I think client accounting services is such a great example.
Yeah.
And we had our AI symposium, AICPA and SEMA in March. And of the 5 insights that we had, number one is that bookkeeping is already automated and it has AI adopted in it. And then bullet number 4 was about advisory services. And advisory services started to see more AI. But, we started the conversation, CAS 1.0 conversations 14, 15 years old. Now we're on CAS 2.0, and that conversation's at least 5 to 7 years old.
Sure.
And that's really what AI is creating, is the move from 1.0 transactional to 2.0 advisory. And so upskilling all of those folks we have on our CAS team to be able to say, these are how you should be interacting with your client become paramount.
You talk about upskilling. I just want to dig into that a little bit more. Like, you use Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
And like me and like everybody else, we're using like 10% of what it does.
Yep.
So
Yep.
It's like we're driving a car in Texas in August and we're not putting on the air conditioner because we don't know where the button is. It's ridiculous. And nobody invests in the training. I think it's an opportunity for the AICPA, and I'm wondering what the organization might have planned or what you're thinking of to help the profession get upskilled.
Yeah, so we're talking to a lot of the technology-related companies. We already have some of that embedded into like our CAS training of that very directly. Tax has fallen a little bit behind. So tax research is AI-driven right now. And we have a partnership with BlueJay through CPA.com, and that's just exploding. I mean, everyone's seeing the reliability of that. And but tax prep isn't there yet. But we're having conversations with companies that are looking to get into that. And then audit, it's getting integrated. So, all of the work we're doing around DAS. So it's getting trained up with the tool and how AI integration can happen with it. And then, conferences like these, making sure that we're focused on AI and upskilling its pieces of that, and embedding that into staff level training that we offer as well becomes really important.
Let's pivot a little bit. We'll talk about recruitment. We'll talk about talent. Okay. Why the talent shortage? Like, why did this happen? And what are we doing to fix it? And by the way, it seems like it's getting fixed. Am I wrong? Like, we're starting to see data that's showing that there are more college kids taking accounting classes or whatever. And by the way, it almost seems like it's taking the profession by surprise. Like, how did it happen?
It's all I can say, Gene, is after it was announced that I was becoming CEO,
everybody joined up.
Enrollment was up 12% in the fall.
It was unbelievable. Did you see the mobs? They were all down 6th Avenue.
Yeah. So spring semester this year, it's up 12%. You're all welcome, profession, for all the hard work I've done. Actually, no, and now I'm like fighting with our past chair and current chair. They're like, wait a minute. You can stop taking credit for now because we were in charge, on the board of this profession. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so I think there's a variety of factors to it. First of all, I think the economy has softened. There is a sense of stability around having an accounting degree. And I think that's a big part of it. But I also think the pipeline initiatives that we have done are starting to see the improvement as part of it. And that has been, 3 to 5 years in the making to make it happen. But, we are our own worst enemy at times. And I always have told the story how, I joined the profession in 1991. I graduated. I heard about Black Friday that happened coming out of the busy season in 1990, where all of the firms laid off, the SNL implosion happened, banks were going out of business, accountants were on the street left and right? And so then the following years, I'm coming out and I walk by the Career Center when they actually had to post names up on the wall of who was being interviewed.
Wow.
The number of interviews were half what they were the year before. Right. And then we were hearing that the number of job offers were half what they were the year before.
Right.
I was lucky. I had 6 first interviews. I got called back on 5 of the 6. The one that didn't call me back was a firm that I spent most of my public accounting career with because I left to go to them 3 years later.
Wow. Okay.
And why did they need people 3 years later? It's because the year I graduated, they didn't hire anybody.
Jeez, right.
And so now all of a sudden they're like looking around, where are all the seniors at?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You didn't hire it. And the profession did that. And so now all of a sudden, that word got to the classes behind us. And then people started leaving accounting to go into finance, computer science, and all these things. And so the mid-90s became this built-up problem.
Sure.
And then that just kind of continued on. Right. And we were never able to fix it beyond that. So here we are in, 2020s, and we're seeing some slight improvements. But those improvements are only bringing us back to 2020 or pre-2020 numbers. We still have a lot of work to do.
And what work will that be?
I think in our pipeline initiative, we had 7 or 8 key areas. One of the big ones, I think, is telling a more compelling story. I've said this for years.
Yeah.
I used to say this to my firm. I did the recruiting for my firm back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I'd go to the partners and I said, is this firm good enough for your kid? And they'd look at me like, well, I talked my kid out of going into accounting. I'm like, well, that's a problem by itself.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like, if this career was good enough for you, it should be good enough for them. Right? So I said, but you know what? I said, we're in Buffalo. And I'm hiring somebody else's kid. And chances are I'm going to know the parents of that kid in some way, shape, or form. Sure. It's a tiny town.
Sure.
So I want to be able to look them into the eye and say, this is the right firm for them. And if it's not, partner, fix it. You're in charge. Let's make it happen. And I think we're starting to see even some semblance of people taking more control over their career. There are so many different opportunities. If you don't like the firm you're at today, go find another firm. There will be the right culture out there somewhere. The opportunities are still there, or, business and industry, whatever it is. The greatest profession in the world, diversity of practice, what everyone does. Me spending 3 years as a media planner,
sure.
I think I might have been the only one ever.
That was a CPA.
Exactly. And my firm, the political firm used to actually promote the fact that I was a CPA with their political money.
Yeah.
And, there was a sense of, trust in that.
Yeah. You it's funny you tell that story. My story is that I'm a CPA, proud to be, clinging on to the certification. I call myself the world's worst CPA because to me, if it's close enough, it's good enough, and that's not the kind of person you want to hire as a CPA. But I write a lot, and I cover financial stuff, and we sell a lot of technology, and it is having a CPA is as credible as it was 40 years ago when I first got it. Yeah. And I meet CPAs, Mark, that were CMOs of Fortune 200 companies that do media planners. And there's this credential that just basically says data and you know numbers. And I've had a few people that I've talked to today that have said the profession needs to do a better job telling that story. What do you think about that?
There are so many stories.
Yeah.
That's what makes it and we've had members say time and again, we need a marketing campaign around CPA. Okay, what are we going to say? I'm a partner in a large firm. I'm a partner in a small firm. I'm a sole practitioner. I'm in business and industry as a CFO. I mean, there's so many stories.
Sure.
How do we capture all that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the more important piece is I want everybody to tell their story. You know what? We have 400,000 members of the AICPA, and not just U.S., they're global in that number. 600,000 if you include the SEMA numbers that we have. If we can convince 25% of them to tell their story to someone else and convince them to become a CPA, imagine what our numbers do.
Yeah, I agree.
So it can't be about, you want us to arm you with a tool to be able to, how to develop your story to be able to tell it?
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Right.
But, I've taken it upon myself well before I came back to the AICPA. I went to all my Buffalo friends and I said, look, accounting is an incredible career. You should convince your kid to do it. And I tell you what, tell me where you want to retire to. We'll get your kid to go to school for accounting. I will get them placed in that town so that they'll be there before you're ready to retire, and then you can move down there after the fact.
Fair enough.
And everybody, just one. I want every one of our CPAs just convince one kid to go to school for accounting.
You have been in the profession for 100 years? 200? You've seen a lot of CPAs.
I have.
You've seen a lot of CPA firms. Tell me about the firms and the individual CPAs that have crushed it. You don't have to name names, but what do you see? What firms do you see now that are they're doing the right thing? And what are the right things?
The right things, and I think it comes in a variety of sizes and shapes,
of course.
Right? So starting with the small firm first and foremost, I think for those firms who have built their lifestyle firm, they don't have to do it like other people do it. They have to do it for what is right for them.
Sure.
And building that lifestyle firm, working for clients that they enjoy, and picking a niche that they enjoy, and they are so passionate about it, and they are so well connected to their clients, that is just such a great way to do business as a small firm. And then in a larger firm, because it's gotten so complicated, I think a lot of the larger firms, they've changed their governance model to be more of a corporate environment, right? Having a truly dedicated CEO, a C-suite running the firm, a board that isn't developed based on, having a representative of audit and a representative of tax. No,
Sure.
It is a board to bring strategic direction to the firm.
Yep.
And they're the ones, and we've seen this develop over the last probably 10 years.
This kind of dovetails back to, we were talking about people, and you talk about firms doing it the right way. Talk to me about culture within firms. What do you see working? Is it just about compensation?
No, it's not comp, and that's the thing. It's the firms that create a one-fits-one environment, understanding that every employee is unique. I don't care if you have 2 employees or 2,000 employees. Every employee is unique, and being able to develop a career plan for each one of those individuals separately is the culture of choice. But it's also about how your managers lead,
Sure.
and want to develop that next professional coming up. I've always had the mantra that I want to replace myself with somebody else. I keep saying everyone's replaceable, right? So coming out of my international association the last 5 years, they replaced me with someone else who's doing great.
Right.
And I'm really proud to see that. I left AICPA in 2020. They replaced me with others inside.
The world continue to turn.
The world will continue to turn. We all have to understand that. I think the firms who embrace that and develop people up, those are the ones with the best culture.
Okay. 2 more questions and I'll let you go.
Yep.
If you were to quit your job as chair, as running this organization, and I hope you never do, and I hope you forever you're running it, you're doing it, and you're going to open up your own firm, go back to being a CPA in public practice, what kind of a firm would it be? What would you specialize in? What would you do?
It's funny. I used to talk about this all the time. In my prior stint at AICPA, I used to say, when Barry fires me, what I will do is
It's always good to have a plan B.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
I will go out and I will start my own firm. It'll be a wealth management, financial planning, tax, client accounting services firm.
For baseball players.
Sure, why not? You're right. I mean, and I had a lot of connection in baseball. One of the guys I worked for in college, he signed with the Yankees in 1949. It's a whole other story.
Wow. Okay.
But but in any event, I used to say this all the time, and I said I would use outsourcing solutions. There's a bunch of great technologies here, like SurePrep and Variety, that you don't have to go it alone on tax.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people smarter than me. Client accounting services, automate the heck out of that, and really about the client relationship.
Yeah.
And the wealth management piece, we did that at my old firm.
Yeah.
Having that as a big piece of it to me is really important. So individual advisory services, client accounting advisory services, that would be the firm I'd start today.
You went to a Jesuit college in Buffalo.
I did.
Okay. Whenever you graduated, and we won't disclose the year, but let's take you back to that year,
Yep.
and you're going to give your self-graduating college some advice.
Yeah.
What would you have told yourself?
1991, so I talked about that before. I would say, you've got this. Don't sweat it. It was a hard journey to get you there. You did it.
You're going to be okay.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Those loans will get paid off. You will meet the right lady along the way. It's surreal to actually look back and what I struggled through to get to this point.
Yeah, it's funny. We say the same thing about our kids. Like, if I had known how our kids ended up now, I mean, I could tell myself when they were back in 7th and 8th grade in middle school, it would have calmed things down a lot,
Absolutely.
So it does make a difference.
Absolutely.
Mark, thank you. It was great. Appreciate all of your insights. That was a lot of fun.
Great.
I want to wish you best of success running the organization. They could not have picked a better person.
Thanks, Gene.
So I'm excited for the future.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Go and do whatever you're going to do and enjoy yourself. Go to sleep. Okay? Go to sleep.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay? Do you have a topic or a guest that you would like to hear on Thrive? Please let us know. Visit payx.me/Thrive Topics and send us your ideas or matters of interest. Also, if your business is looking to simplify your HR, payroll, benefits, or insurance services, see how Paychex can help. Visit the Resource Hub at paychex.com/works. That's WORX. Paychex can help manage those complexities while you focus on all the ways you want your business to thrive. I'm your host, Gene Marks, and thanks for joining us. Till next time, take care.
This podcast is property of Paychex Incorporated 2025, all rights reserved.